his computer.
Hello, Simon G.
Hari Om, welcome. So yes, welcome Nara, welcome Manik Ji, welcome. Appreciate you being here. Um, we've talked a little bit online, and I'm glad you finally made it to the class. Um, wow, I honestly I did not expect this kind of turnout, uh, just because it was so last minute, and I'm whatever, you know. Dana's here. Kelly's iPhone. Thank you, Kelly's iPhone, for bringing Kelly, hopefully, as well, here too. Beatriz. Beatriz. Yes, Kelly. Está aquí. Elizabeth's notebook is here. Vivi is here as well. Mariam. Bonjour, Mariam. Thank you from France, from being here. Um, and who else? Mrinalini, Dr. Mrinalini, and Manik Ji. All right. That's the roll call. The roll call is
Hey,
over.
you
Everyone
missed
is
me,
raised.
Simon.
Oh, Umeshi.
Yeah.
Umeshi.
Are you in Texas or?
What yes, I am in the land of the vaqueros. Los
Okay.
vaqueros, which means cowboys.
Okay. All right. Great. So I look forward to meeting you on Sunday.
Yes, yes, likewise. It will be wonderful, and I can't wait. One thing that I've discovered, again, I know we're recording and then I'll get on with the class in 30 seconds, but I had never been to this city, Dallas, Texas, before. Um, didn't expect much, but I will tell you, it has been a refreshing um, experience to go to one of the most beautiful Hanuman temples that I've seen here in America, and to go to a beautiful Radha Krishna temple here in Dallas, Texas. There's a giant expatriate Indian community, and the city itself is so beautiful, so green and manicured and wide boulevards and such. And I never expected it. Anyway, I think it's the most America city I've ever been to, and I've been all over the US. Never seen a city
And
this pretty.
Simon G, one input about Dallas is back from 2006-7 timeframe itself. They were attracting a lot of Indian community folks who are business oriented, who are having a lot of entrepreneur. Like they could be anywhere from a shop owner all the way up to large business folks. And then later on, with the whole Amazon swing, right, of third party sellers, quite a few folks started making Dallas their home because it was a very good distribution hub as well as storage. Warehouses were easier to get.
Yeah, geographically, it's more or less in the center, and yeah, and like I said, the roads are wonderful, and yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are reasons, but I was not expecting to be wow. And I'm in the very far north of Dallas, so I don't like traffic and stuff, and so it's perfect. Monique, are you from the area?
No, I'm from Northeast. I used to travel there a lot for some work in the past when I was in management consulting back then. So I discovered a lot more about that area. I was planning to invest in real estate at that time, missed it, but it's a great area. I just studied a little bit about its dynamics back then.
Yeah, so I mean, FYI for anyone in the US who's thinking about moving, I suppose that's why a lot of people are moving from California. Also, the Match.com headquarters is here, which, we have a compatibility app, so maybe I'll just go knock on their door one day. We'll see what happens. Okay, let's get on with our class. I'm going to turn off my video and begin my sharing. Thank you, everybody, for just bearing with me for a second as we chit chat. It is a morning, so everyone is hopefully having their coffee and is settled in now. All right. So let me find what we're going to look at today. We can get started. Hari Om. All right. So the topic today is yogas. Yogas and Jyotisha are the heart, the beating heart of what makes Jyotisha a living creature, a living being. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So astrology begins with this understanding that there are shapes and patterns in the sky, the shapes made by multiple planets and the placement of individual planets. So we're going to begin with this very basic view of what those shapes are and how the ancient sky watchers looked at that sky and extrapolated meaning for themselves below. So the first of the types of yogas are what I call the shape yogas. Now, the way I approach this is there are a lot of names to remember. There are a lot of um, Sanskrit names and such. To me, that's less important, even though I'm the Sanskrit guy, than understanding the principles involved. So the principles involved are the following. If in the sky, the planets cluster around a particular area, then that means something. So for example, in this horoscope, this is the horoscope of Roger Federer. In the North Indian chart, so for this particular section on yogas, the North Indian chart is more useful because it divides the space east, west, north, and south nicely. But you can certainly see it from the South Indian as well if we divide like this. Notice that all the planets are on one side of the chart. You see that? Now, in this case, all the planets are in the east section. Why is that? Because the Lagna, the ascendant, represents the east, what is rising. That's why it's called the rising sign. In this case, the ascendant is here. You see that? So this is the east. So there is a yoga. And so the word yoga doesn't just mean the combination of two planets. It means a combination of factors that lead to a particular meaning, a particular effect in the life of the person. So when you find that all the planets or most of the planets, it doesn't have to be all of them. In fact, there will always be at least one outside because Rahu Ketu are always opposite. But even if there's two planets outside of this, you can still call this a yoga. And we'll get to the names in a minute. I just want you to see the pattern. When all the planets are clustered this way around on the east side of the country, if you will, it gives a type of nature to the person. Think about the East Coast of the United States versus the West Coast, right? The East Coast, you have New York, you have Boston, you have Washington. They see the sunrise first. It's more action oriented, it's me oriented. The person is about my effect, what I do and how I affect the world. I get myself up, I motivate myself. It's me oriented. Okay. Now, this isn't a judgment. It's not like, oh, well, that means they're selfish. No, no, no. It's just they are action oriented, me oriented people versus the opposite. Here's an example of a chart. This is the chart of Joseph Campbell, the great mythologist and educator, whose planets are all on the west side of the chart, except for the moon and Rahu, you can see. Now, this is a person who is other oriented. What does that mean? If you're other oriented, you make a good counselor, teacher, consultant, mantrin, someone who works to benefit other people, who reflects other people's energy back onto them. Whereas the East person is the one who sends the energy into the world. Myself, my chart is oriented like this. So This is my orientation to the world as well, like more reactive than proactive. Does this make sense, guys? So far? Let's see, I have a few comments.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So what we don't see here is what in Western astrology, or just in astrology, is called the MC and the IC. The MC simply the medium coeli, which is the highest point in the zodiac, in the sky, and the IC is the lowest point. And it's usually represented by the 10th house and the 4th house. Okay, that's what actually divides the heavens. But we actually don't need that. What we're doing is simply looking at, are all the planets on one side or another side of the chart? So these are yogas. These are very simple yogas that have an effect throughout the life of the person. Meaning, it doesn't matter what period you're running, it doesn't matter how old you are, from the beginning of life to the end of your life, you will have these qualities of being other oriented, in this case of Joseph Campbell. And if we go to, here's a chart of Taylor Swift. Notice that she has actually three grahas outside of this, but still the predominance of energy is in the east for her. Okay. So I just want you to notice these patterns, even if we're not going into interpretation. Notice the division of planets between the east and the west. Okay. Now,
May I
another
ask
way.
if there's a north and south?
Sorry?
Can I ask if there's a north and south?
Yes, and that's exactly where we're going right now in the
Okay.
next slide. One, two,
Okay.
three, boom.
Okay. Thank
So
you.
now, if we know where the east is and where the west is, then by definition, we can extrapolate the north, which is the IC, and the south, which is the MC. So let me erase MC here. MC hammer, go away. So now we have south and north. Now look at this chart. Note that there is still a division of where most of the planets are on one side, but now we're going to divide the chart like this. And I'm using the North Indian for this, but again, you can use the South Indian as well. And note, let me do a more correct division here. Now in the North and the South Indian, it's like this, because it's always from the ascendant to the 7th house. Notice, now, if you're new to astrology or if you haven't ever looked at it this way, this is the daylight. This is daytime. The sun. Here's the sun, bright, beautiful sun, very poorly drawn sun. And this is nighttime. So everything that is on the left side here is night. That is on the north side of the chart. What does that mean, night? It means below the earth, below the horizon. And everything that is on the south side, that is above, that is to the right, is visible. So this is the visible, okay? This is the invisible. This is below, under your feet for wherever you are. Invisible. This concept makes sense. So let me ask you then, if someone's planets, all of their planets are in the invisible portion, as you notice, for this is Jim Carrey. Now he's a famous person. What do you mean invisible? He's very famous. What does this mean? Or what could this mean? Again, we're not being stuck on interpretation here. What we want to do is notice patterns. Mrinalini, yes, subconscious mind. Perfect, beautiful. This is a person who is deeply motivated to understand and harness the power of the subconscious mind, who possibly is introverted, yes, and who has a deep by extension, has a deep interest in psychology and sciences related to the harnessing of the mind. It doesn't necessarily have to be spiritual, but it is spiritual because it's working with the invisible, the unseen forces that drive human behavior. Now, Elizabeth has a wonderful comment. She says, it's interesting that the 8th and the 12th houses are visible, right? Now, Elizabeth, here's the thing about those two houses. The 8th house represents the cave of the horoscope. So while it's in the visible portion of the sky, it is nevertheless, or it's also called randra. Randra means a hole in the ground that goes deep into the underworld, basically a cave. And so while it's visible, what is visible of the 8th house is just a hole. And when you go into it, it gets dark really quick, right? Because the sunlight only enters a few feet and then you're deep into, and that cave is vast, it's massive. So think of the 8th house as the cave of the horoscope, which is how the ancients also saw it, okay? The 12th house, by contrast, it's a house of bed pleasures. It's a house of, okay, what does that mean? Well, where do you have bed pleasures? It's not out in the middle of the street. It's in your private bedroom, at home, in your lair. So the 12th house, also the 12th house during the course of the day, the schedule of the day represents the time after sunrise, but the time that you're still sort of lounging in bed a little bit if you don't get up right away. And that's why it represents bed pleasures, that really comfortable, lazy, nice feeling like on a Sunday morning if you don't have class with Simon and you get to just kind of wrap yourself around the comforter and the sheets and go, so nice. That's the 12th house. And so the 12th house also is a kind of being, even though the sun is up, it's visible, you are ensconced away from the visible world. And so it is really not until the 11th, the 10th, and the 9th house that you are fully out in the world. So this is a bit of just a visualization, okay? It doesn't, you don't have to look at it this way because 12th house also means leaving your home. So at some point you do get out of bed and you actually leave the house and travel to work. And that's usually when people are traveling to work, when the sun in the sky is in the 12th house, when it's moving through this. And when the sun gets to the 11th house, that's when you're talking to your coworkers and friends, and you're at the water cooler and you're having meetings, and right, it's very social. And then in the 10th house, you get a lot of work done. You have lunch, 9th house, you're back, and so forth. So there is a rhythm to the day that people have followed, not just in modern times, but since the dawn of civilization. You know, bed pleasures are bed pleasures. Everyone has enjoyed lounging in bed, and then eventually they leave the house in the 12th home, and when the sun is in the 12th bhava. And they take their bullock cart with their clay pots and they go to the market to sell it, right? We do the same thing. All right, so it's a little digression. So back to Jim Carrey, what could this say about the character of the person? Well, I was fascinated to read an article about Jim Carrey's sort of early life, and he said that when he first arrived in Hollywood, he drove up the hill. He had nothing, like a very, messed up car that barely made it up the hill. And he went there and he said, he told himself he would not come down from that hill until he had fully visualized being a massively successful actor making millions and millions of dollars. And he said, it became so clear that I embodied that vision, like I was that man. And yes, he manifested it basically through the power of his own subconscious mind and harnessing the power of manifestation. And to this day, he talks about how like how it's even dangerous. Like he can just get into a space and manifest, and I don't think he fully understands how and why that works. But you see, the ability to harness the subconscious mind is given to people who have the planets here in the lower half of the chart. Yes, Elizabeth, that's right. He wrote himself a check for $1 million at that point, even though he had nothing. Yep. So this is the ability to visualize, to harness the invisible, the unseen forces for possibly seen effects. Obviously, he's a famous, wealthy person. Now, does it matter which house the planets are in? Yes, of course it matters. But if you think about it, if the planets were in the third house, which he has Mars in the third, then it would be more about the power of his conscious will. My will overcome any obstacle, right? That's harnessing the will. Fourth house is harnessing the conscious mind, the subconscious mind. Fifth house is the power of creativity. Sixth house is the power of hard work. But all of these are internal qualities. Like sixth house person will get up earlier than everybody else. If everyone's getting up at 6 a.m., they'll get up at 4 a.m. And make sure they outwork everybody else. The great athletes have this sixth house. Michael Jordan, LeBron James, all these people, you think they're so glamorous, but their glamour is built on the sixth house of the most unglamorous things. That is getting up before everybody else and doing the work. Okay? So again, this is before we even go into where's the sun, where's the moon, we're looking at these patterns in the sky. And this is how the ancient sky watchers viewed the sky, because they didn't have software, they didn't have, all this fancy stuff. Okay, let's erase this. And let's go to the next chart and see the opposite example. Here now is an example of all the planets in the opposite side. This is the chart of the infamous O.J. Simpson, where again, you see, obviously K2, one of the nodes is going to be opposite, so you don't worry about that. But there's only one planet outside, and most of the planets are in the visible part of the zodiac. So very simply, this is the opposite. This is a person who is outside oriented. That is, it is their dharma, it is their purpose, it is in life, it is their path to be seen. And they get their cues from the visible part of life, whereas a person with the opposite yoga gets their cues from the invisible part, from the deep inner side. So again, we have this kind of division. Okay. Let's see. Any questions so far?
Quick question, Samanji.
Yes, sir.
While making the chart, I think we are looking at D1s, right? And by any chance, should anyone consider Chalit chart by any chance, or we should keep that notion aside for the moment?
Well, even in the Chalit chart, so the question is, do we consider house cusps, basically? And the most important cusp is the cusp of the first house. And then the seventh cusp will be the same. Yes, we can. I will get to cusps actually in a second, but still the general shape, whether we consider cusps or not, will be the same. And for these particular yogas, I'm going to say the answer is no, because they're based strictly on Rashi, and their definition is Rashi based in the classic text. So when I say definition, I mean, let's see, these are called Nabhasa yogas, and you see we have a list of all the possible ones, and I will get to that in a minute, but they're all based on the shapes in the sky, but there wasn't definition by specific bhava cusps and so forth. Okay, so for
Got it.
these
So the
yogas,
only reason I'm asking is because sometimes what happens is if the planet is at a very low degree, right? And if the bhava changes. So for example, in the one which you're showing, O.J. Simpson, that says moon is at 229 for 8th house,
yeah,
and that's in Pisces. If that Chalit chart shows that no, it actually falls in his 7th house, then
fine.
because of the border being changed due to the Chalit situation at that time, then there might be a different interpretation of moon in 8th house versus moon in 7th house. That's the only reason I was asking.
Okay, so yes, so absolutely, there will be a different interpretation if the moon is actually in the 7th house by a house system, like Placidus house system or Shripati or any of the number of house systems. In our KP class, that's exactly what we do. We look at the actual house, Placidus house, and our KP class is still ongoing, and we have some students from KP here, in fact. So those students know how very, very important that is. For this is just to get a vibe. Because notice that one planet, Jupiter in this case, is outside of the group. It doesn't matter. Still, we're going for this vibe of, look, most of the planets are in the visible portion. Even if the moon, and by the way, the moon could still be in the 7th house and still be above the horizon.
Got it.
So,
Okay, thank
and
you.
in this case, it will be because the ascendant is 1 degree Aquarius. So the moon, whether it's in the 7th or the 8th, will still be visible for this particular instance. But the question is valid because what we're trying for is a vibe more so than any kind of specific placement. We will get to specific placements. That's coming in a second. Okay?
Thank you.
All right. So now consider that even one planet, when placed on an angle, so now we're going from the very sort of large scale vibe where the person's planet's located, and we will come back to it. But this, we can also extrapolate about a lot about a person simply from one planet and its placement in a person's chart. So this is the chart of Arnold Schwarzenegger. And here is a basic principle that is not found in any classic text. And yet it is a yoga. And this is the thing, people think if we're teaching yogas that it has to be only by Paladipika, only by Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra, or whatever. But this is a yoga. And what is this yoga? When a planet is very close to the ascendant, what does very close mean? Within a couple of degrees, okay? Well, what does a couple mean? Is it 1 or 2 or 3? Okay, if you want to tie me down to a definition, it should be definitely in the same nakshatra, and you could say it's within 1 Navamsha, 3 degrees, 20 minutes. Okay? If you want to tie me down to a definition, but really the closer the better. In this case, it's 1 minute and 1 degree and 4 minutes. When a planet is very tightly conjoined with the ascendant degree, it will mark the person for life with the qualities of that planet. In this case, it is a strong Mercury in its own sign, so the qualities of communication, the qualities of youthfulness, the qualities of being able to talk to anyone, the qualities of being very quick in the mind, quick-minded, the qualities of sometimes irresponsibility, of being a dual person, wanting your cake and eating it too. There's negative qualities, obviously, as well. But this will be a mercurial type of person. Well, wait, he's a bodybuilder. How is that Mercury? Okay, well, we can get to that. But on a basic level, this is a man who is a communicator, who is a business person. Mercury is the planet of independent business, who is very clever, who is very talkative, tells great stories, all those things. This we can get simply by the proximity of the planet to the ascendant degree. Now, most people don't have such proximity, but let's take a look at some other charts. Here is the chart of Angelina Jolie. You can see she has Venus very close to the ascendant. Well, now this is just think about the quality of the person's life. A Mercury person will present themselves to the world in a different way than a Venus person. In a Venus person, Venus is the brightest object in the sky aside from the sun and the moon. So it is the most visible of the quote unquote stars in the sky. It is the evening star and the morning star. So Venus is beautiful to behold. When you look up at the sky and you see Venus, your gaze pauses for a second. Whether you're man, woman, child, old or young, doesn't matter. Your gaze naturally pauses for a second. So when a person who has Venus very close to their ascendant attracts, now, whatever they look like, they may not be classically beautiful like Angelina Jolie. They may be, who knows, and it doesn't have to be a white person, a black person, brown, whatever color skin, whatever culture, however old you are. If you have Venus on the ascendant, you attract. There is that capacity for attraction, for beauty, for grace. There's an element of grace. So there is that polarity, right? If you could think of it in terms of magnetism, where it is an attractive force, there's also the quality of desire. This person will be ruled by their desires, because Venus, the more you understand the qualities of the planets from the Vedic perspective, the more you understand philosophically life, because Venus is a rajasic planet. Rajas, the word rajas is fascinating. It's a fascinating word. Rajas. It means a lot of things, actually. Raja means menstruation. Okay, it is the woman's menstruation. Raja means, the definition in the Bhagavad Gita is Trishna, which is thirst. When you're thirsty for something, I really want to buy this dress. I really want to have this person in my life. I really want this job. You're thirsty. Okay. Rajas also means pollen or dust. Shri Guru Charana Saroja Raja Nijamanu Mukuru Sudhari Raja. That's the word, Raja. Same word. So there's this quality of Raja. Now, this is not Raja, which means king. Okay, it's a completely different word. Raja, the short means this quality of passion, desire, nature, in this case. Okay, so the person will be marked by those things as well. So whatever the planet is, let's take a look at another example here. Any questions on this? Let's see. Elizabeth, can you see in a similar way if someone is conflicted about that due to their personality or life circumstances? Example, someone has most of their planets visible, but they would prefer to have a more private life, or someone has most of their planets in the West, but would prefer to be more self-focused. Yeah, it always creates an imbalance. This is great. Because by nature, the sky is unbalanced. All the planets are on one side. So people will always look on the other side and go, oh man, the grass is greener. The reality, though, is that if they had the other thing, they would most likely get bored. And understanding that it is your dharma to be in the public eye, let's say, if all the planets are in the top, then you can melt into it. You could still be shy for whatever the 8th house is in the visible portion, as someone noted. So is the 12th house. So what if all your planets are in the 12th and the 8th? This creates a special yoga called Vapi yoga, which we will look at as we go through this, which is the get thee to a nunnery combination. If you don't get this reference, this is from Hamlet, where Ophelia, Hamlet's sister, who is mentally disturbed, let's say, or emotionally disturbed, is prompted to go retreat from the world because presumably she had this Vapi yoga in her chart, meaning that even though the planets are in the visible portion, they are in that part of the chart that has to do with suffering and the negation of suffering, which is spiritual emancipation. So there are nuances to this, yes, and we will slowly dive into them. At this point, we just want to recognize the patterns, okay? A planet close to the ascendant in a different house also has a strong impact, right? Yeah, so technically Venus, okay, so in this case, the first house cusp is 5 degrees in Angelina's chart. So Venus is technically in her 12th house, if you're going by the Placidus house system or any house system. But it's still going to have an effect if it's within 3 degrees, 20 minutes. Now, I think your question is, what if the ascendant is, say, 0 degrees, and there's a planet at 29 degrees, let's say Saturn's at 29 degrees of the previous sign? That is a very good question. So by influence, it will influence the ascendant, yes. But when we calculate yogas, it will not. For example, when we're calculating Raja yogas, let's say this Saturn is at 29 degrees, 59 minutes, practically in the sign Cancer, we would not consider Saturn and Venus conjoined for the sake of calculating yogas. And Angelina Jolie does not need it. Okay, she doesn't need that. But anyway, whether she needs it or not, Saturn would influence her ascendant if it were very close, within 3 degrees, 20 minutes. So in terms of personality quality, yes, the influence would be there, to answer your question, Mrinalini. But, let's see what happened.
I think I read somewhere that, say Venus is at 4 degrees in the 5th house, or I won't even talk about the 7th house or where it directly aspects the ascendant. But if it is at a degree close to the ascendant and in, say, the 4th house or 10th house, it's still close to the ascendant degree. So I read somewhere that it does have an impact on the personality of that person.
Absolutely. So you're talking about an aspect. So let's say Venus were at 5 degrees Libra, which we would call it a square in Western astrology. It would be Venus would be square the ascendant, or if it were at 5 degrees Scorpio, it would be trine. Is that what you're talking about?
That is also one of the things that I've read, but say it's in a house where it is not in a square or a trine with the ascendant.
So maybe in the 6th house here at 5 degrees Sag.
Yeah.
Okay. No. So this would be called an inconjunct or a quincunx in Western astrology, even though traditional Western astrology, which is like more in line with Jyotisha, doesn't even consider quincunx an aspect. That's more of a modern thing. But modern astrologers have found that when two planets are on the same degree and they're 6 or 8 houses away, they do actually have an influence on each other. So, but for our purposes here, no, absolutely not. The yoga that I'm talking about is strictly when a planet is on the 1st house cusp, or as we'll see in the next chart, take a look at this chart. This is again the chart of Mr. Joseph Campbell, who, can you see any planet very close to a cusp?
Yeah, Mars.
Mars, very good. Now we saw earlier that he has all of his planets on the western half of the horoscope. So he's very other oriented. He's about facilitating the experience of others versus imposing his will onto the world. So if you don't know who Joseph Campbell is, he is the author of many books, the main theme of which is the hero's journey. He distilled the essence of the myths of the world. And he is who George Lucas went to when he was writing this little
Yes,
indie
Star
movie.
Wars was like scene by scene. I'm a screenwriter as well, so I'm very familiar with Joseph Campbell's work. So
Aha.
Star Wars was like a beat by beat reflection of what Campbell wrote. So
Yes, Star Wars was exactly beat by beat of how the hero first is there's discontent, and then there's the guru comes, a mentor, and he's shown a different way, and he has to make a decision, and all of these are pivotal points. This is what Joseph Campbell found in all the myths of the world, from the Vedic myths to the Aztec myths to the Norse myths to the Germanic myths to the Mongolian myths and so forth. They all shared this quality of the hero's journey. And he gave this to the world, ladies and gentlemen. He spent his life giving this knowledge to the world. So he was also an athlete and so forth. So he was marked by Martian qualities as well. But this Mars being exactly on his seventh cusp marked him as a Mars person, but someone who related to Mars not in a personal way, but in an impersonal, in a divine way, because he defined. I mean, Jung talked about archetypes, right? Well before Joseph Campbell. But Campbell also expounded on this idea of archetypes and what is the hero's myth. And he put it in terms of like, it's not just people who go out there and slay dragons. We all do it. A stay-at-home mom, a working dad, we all go through this because we have to slay our own dragons in our own lives. And so he made this available to us. So he took the myths of the world and reflected them back to us in a coherent way, right? Based on his personality, which was to reflect, right? So now, can you predict this if you just looked at this chart? Well, no, you can't, unless you fully analyze all the yogas in his chart, which is what we're going to get into. And this is why when I teach this class, I'm going to reuse all of these charts that I've put. I'm not picking charts that fit my narrative. We're going to pick a few charts. I'm going to stick with them. And we're going to see how through all the yogas mentioned, you can begin to develop a personality and show a certain life experience. All right. Here is another chart. Yeah, question?
no. Go ahead.
Okay. Here is another chart of a person you may not be familiar with. This is an old-timey, basically old-timey what? Elon Musk character from the 50s and 60s. Can you see any planet conjoined with a cusp? Let's see.
Mars again.
So Mars is within 5 degrees of the seventh house. So you could definitely
Is
say that
Mercury?
there is
Okay, yeah.
Mars influence, but anything else? This is a trick question, by the way. It's a little
Venus
tricky.
and Ketu.
Venus and Ketu, thank you. And Saturn. Venus, Ketu, and Saturn. What? Okay, wait, what? The cusp in question now is the MC that I referred to earlier. I just kind of threw this out as a little lure to see who would bite. And the good fish have bitten. So yes, MC is the southernmost point, but more important than that, it is the highest point in the sky for your location. So in Houston, Texas, where this man was born, 6 degrees Aquarius represented the apex of the sky. Oh, sorry, not of the sky, of the zodiac. Okay. So this was when planets reached this point, it was the highest point they could go, after which they would begin to descend in the sky. So the apex, referred to as the MC, which in normal Vedic charts you won't find, okay? So this is why, again, I'm teaching this class in the way that, in a slightly different way, honoring the Vedic tradition. But also, I think part of the way I was taught is the way to honor the tradition is to continue innovating and to continue finding what works for your Kala Desha Patra, for your time, place, and season and vessel. Anyway, so the apex represents your public manifestation of how the world sees you. You might be very different, but how the world sees you. So how the world saw this man was defined by Ketu. Ketu is, well,
An
what is Ketu?
outside.
Very much an outsider, right? Weirdo.
Yep.
Now, Angela, do you know something about Howard Hughes? Do you want to share some things?
Well, he was brilliant. He was a paradox. He was
Yeah.
an amazing inventor. He loved Hollywood starlets. He invented bras and airplanes. Like, it was just so interesting.
There's
Yeah,
actually a whole movie on Howard Hughes.
with Leonardo DiCaprio, whose chart
Yep,
we'll
the
look at.
aviator, yeah. So they've
Yeah,
shown him as very eccentric and very much in some cases even on the border of some psychopathy.
yeah, yeah. Which all of which he has, those qualities, which we can see here. I mean, it doesn't help his case that the ruler of his ascendant is exactly conjunct Rahu, exactly conjunct the opposite of the MC, which is the lowest part of the chart, the IC. And so, as Alex noted, Venus is also conjunct the IC, but also with Rahu, the node. So he was absolutely everything you said, all of those things. And even if you don't know anything about him, just looking at the chart, I remember in one reading, I saw the chart of a man, it was Taurus here, and he had Venus exactly on the MC. And this was early on in my career, and I didn't dare say it, but I immediately got, oh, and he had some planets in the fourth house. I said, oh, he's an interior designer. And so I kind of talked around it. Oh, well, you know, beauty and design is a big part of your career and this. And he said, yeah, I'm an internal. No, not internal. He was a fashion designer. And I got that hit right away because Venus was right there and he had some other stuff in his fourth. And I thought, man, if I had just said it, I would have had this client for life. Why? Because if you can pull out, never having met someone, what their profession is, just right, and in this case it was Venus, then they believe in you. Like, oh my God, how did you know that? Out of all the thousands of professions, right? Anyway, this person, Howard Hughes, is an eccentric, an inventor, like you said, a weirdo. But look, Saturn is also there. That means all of the weirdness will have a practicality. There will be a practical purpose to
Oh, I
everything
love
he
that.
does. You see that?
Yeah, that's great.
Now, also, Venus is on the fourth cusp. We can talk about that in a second. But the point I want you to take away here is that a planet close to the ascendant, and again, when I say close, I mean very close, 3 degrees, 20 minutes, will key the person's personality. A planet very close to the MC will key the person's public persona, public image, and they could be very different. In a minute, we'll talk about how a planet actually doesn't have to be exactly conjunct. But for now, I want you to think of this as a yoga, that when a planet is within 3 degrees of the ascendant or the MC, creates a type of lifelong effect. One is on the person's career and public image, which is this, and one is on the person's personality. Okay. All right, so let's keep going here. And now we
Simon,
come, yes,
let me just say, because you mentioned yoga, this is actually explicit in the ancient sources. I mean, ancient astrology. Firmicus Maternus of the 4th century, the orb he uses is 1 degree. So he says within the degree of the ascendant, within the degree of the MC, and he gives delineations of all the planets. But it's about eminence, it's about rank. So very, very powerful.
absolutely. The closer the planet. So we're talking about orb, and I said, if you push me to give you an orb, I'll say a couple degrees. If you really push me, I'll say, okay, up to 3 degrees, 20 minutes. But really, the tighter, the better. The more entrenched, it's in the person's blood, like you can't separate that planet from who they are. However, having said that, now we move on to a different level. Even if a planet is not conjunct the ascendant or the MC, it still becomes a background factor throughout the person's life if it is, in fact, in their ascendant. So now let's go back to the chart of Joseph Campbell. We already ascertained that Mars was very close to his ascendant degree, but opposite. So there would be a theme of Mars throughout his entire life, that he would be faced with this. Maybe in his marriage, his partner would be very Martian. Maybe just in looking at the world, he would be confronted by Martian themes. This will never go away for the person. But for him, it's in the 7th house. Notice for this technique right now, and this is very basic astrology 101, guys. This is astrology 101, but it's profound also. The planet that is in the ascendant, especially if it's just one planet, will have a background effect on the person's life throughout their life. So in the chart of Joseph Campbell, we see Rahu. When he was asked to define himself, when Bill Moyers on live television, or I don't know if it was live, but on television, asked him, "Who are you?" Guess what the answer he gave was? He said, "I'm a maverick."
That's
And
so
Bill,
raw.
that's Rahu. It's Rahu. Rahu the maverick. And Bill Moyers was taken aback. He said, "But you are a distinguished professor at Sarah Lawrence College for the last 30 years. You're a published author. What do you mean you're a maverick?" And Joseph Campbell laughed and he said, "Because everything I've done is to go against the grain," or something to that effect. Meaning that at the college, he had to fight the powers that be to teach the curriculum he wanted. When he went to different cultures, and then he went to a culture that was exactly the opposite, they would say, "Well, how can you go and hang out with cannibals? How can you go and hang out with these people and those people?" And he did. He did all the things you weren't supposed to do. You were supposed to stay in your tribe. What does a maverick do? They explore. They go outside of their comfort zone. They're outside of their culture. This is what he did. And he defined himself that way. So people with Rahu in the ascendant will go against the grain. They will want to do things their way. They are outsiders in some significant way. Does this make sense, guys?
Hmm.
This is a very, very simple way of looking at a chart, but you could tell so much about a person. So if you had this person, you don't know who it is, and they have Rahu in the ascendant, and you simply say these things, "Oh, well, you pride yourself on being an outsider, a maverick, going against the grain from time to time," more than likely you'll see them smile. Um, let's see. I'm checking the comments here. How would we interpret Mars conjoined with the ascendant within 1.5 degrees? Well, let's just go with Mars in the ascendant. The Mars arc, you become a votary of the planet in the ascendant. A votary means a representative of. So Mars will create a sense of restlessness, a sense of ambition. The statistician Gauquelin, the French statistician who wanted to disprove astrology, he took the charts of athletes, authors, doctors, scientists, artists, and he was able to see with statistical relevance, much to his chagrin, that the athletes had Mars either in the first house or the 10th house, or more precisely, within 15 to 20 degrees of the ascendant and 15 to 20 degrees of the 10th cusp. I believe that's more or less, I might be misrepresenting that a little bit, but that was his point. And he came up with this idea called Gauquelin sectors, that when a person has any planet in the area of the ascendant or the 10th house, that the person's career, 10th house, will be keyed to that planet. So he found that scientists had Saturn angular in the first or the 10th. Athletes had Mars angular, or doctors, or surgeons, because when you go into surgery, you're facing blood, and you're going into battle against a particular malignant, whatever it is. So you need to not be afraid. You can't be afraid of blood and complications and challenges. But Venus is the opposite. Venus was found angular in the charts of artists because its orientation towards beauty. So the point here is very simple. If a person has Saturn in the ascendant, they become Saturnine in some very significant ways. And so asking that person to smile and be happy and be gregarious is like asking a turtle to run fast. They can try, but it'll seem weird. It'll seem forced. A Saturn person, their home base is to be rather logical, a little cold, a little aloof. Now, again, everything is influenced by the other planets, but I'm just speaking in isolation. This is how Saturn prefers to be. And a Saturn person, who is the representative of that planet, that is, they have Saturn in the ascendant. I want to define my terms here. That what I'm looking at now is having a single planet in the ascendant. This is the yoga I'm looking at. And it's not a yoga with a name, it's simply a quality. If a person has Mars in the ascendant by itself, these are the qualities of the hero, the qualities of ambition, aggression, fearlessness, energy, the desire to move into spaces where others are fear to tread. Now, it doesn't mean you have to be a hero with Indiana Jones. It could be in business. Hey guys, I'm thinking of expanding our franchise. Whoa, what? No, but what do you mean? We could, yeah, I think we can do it. It's going to be great. That's Mars.
Would Mars in the 6th also behave this way?
Mars in the 6th gives this effect because it aspects the ascendant in the Vedic astrology. It also gives Mars in the 6th is considered auspicious because it gives the ability to overcome almost any obstacle. So yes, because it aspects the ascendant and the 6th house. See, a planet in the ascendant gives you the personality of that planet. But by extension, a planet in any house will give that house the personality of itself. So Mars in the 6th house is the house of discipline, the house of your daily, the things you do on an everyday basis. This will make a person very motivated. It's also the house of competition. So the person will love little challenges all the time. Hey, I'll race you to the top of the mountain. Hey, let's see who can get this task finished first. And they will tend to win. But for now, let's focus on the ascendant. So this is just a short, brief summary of what having a single planet in the ascendant can look like and how it affects the personality. Okay, questions so far? Other questions? Let's see.
Thank you, by the way.
Yeah, well, of course, this is why you guys are here, to have your questions answered. And so notice that we haven't really used the name of any fancy long Sanskrit names or anything like that. We certainly can. And my goal is to use those names when they help you understand the influence. So when we get to something like Lakshmi Yoga, well, it helps to know who Lakshmi is because the name says it all. This is a person who will have abundance. But there are yogas for prosperity, which we'll look at in a minute, that have no name, that are as powerful or even more powerful than the Lakshmi Yoga. Did you know that? Yes. Lakshmi Yoga is great, but there are yogas that give even more prosperity than that. So when the names are important, I will share them with you. And we do have slides with all the names when you want to refer to them. And when you want to, the names are useful really when you're talking to other astrologers. And you're saying, oh, you know what, this person has Viparit Raj Yoga, and therefore da 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 da. But to the client doesn't care. In fact, it'll confuse a client. Too many weird words. All right, let's take a bit of a left turn here and go down this route. One way to diffuse or modify this particular thing, this influence. Let's say you have Saturn in the ascendant, and you don't want to be this cold, sort of aloof person. You want to be a little bit more social. Well, there is a modern upaya that says, look, somewhere in the world, Saturn was not, in fact, most places in the world, Saturn was not in the ascendant at the date and time you were born. What if you moved to those places? How would that change your life? And this is the question that Jim Lewis asked, and I'm sure others asked before him, but he really codified it for our time, is that what if you moved to a location and you were able to experience your chart in a different way? Now, what does that mean? What if Joseph Campbell got tired of being an outsider and a maverick? And he said, well, wait a minute. What if I move a few hundred miles and at the time of my birth, go to where the moon was in the ascendant? And then his experience would have been very different. All these planets, so the moon would be in his ascendant. He'd be a very public person. Shoot, in fact, I should probably run his chart for Sarah Lawrence where he taught. And maybe this was his chart, who knows? My point here is, and this was actually a practice. My first spiritual teacher was a tantric. And he said, and he knew I was into astrology, and he said, why are you so fixated on your chart? Just redraw it to the chart that you want it to be. I said, what do you mean? He said, just turn the ascendant and live your life as if you were that ascendant. What would that look like for you? I said, what? But this is exactly the principle. So you can consider this a tantric practice, an upaya, that is available to us in modern times that really wasn't available in ancient days unless you walked for days and months to change your location. That you could experience life through a different lens. Now, would that negate the chart, the birth chart of Joseph Campbell? No, you're stamped with that. But it would take at least 30, 40, even up to 50% of the emphasis away from that. And the longer you stay at that new location, the more that chart would play on you. So this is a whole, we're not going to go down this path. Obviously, it's not a class on relocation or even on remedies, but I want to suggest to you that some of these yogas, it is possible to adjust based on where you live and how long you live there. Simple suggestion. And that it is in fact I would call it a tantric practice. Tantra in the sense that you're working with what you're given. Tantra means to weave together all the elements of your life into something beautiful. That's it. That's all that Tantra means. Doesn't have anything to do with sex or anything like that. It means to weave the parents, you take the parents you got, the situation in life you have, the body that you have, the desires you have, and to weave them together into something that is more than the sum of the parts. And so or in other words, to use the ground that trips you up, that you fall on, to push yourself up and pick yourself up again. That's Tantra. So in Ayurveda, for example, the science of self-healing is tantric because it's using your Vata, Pitta, Kapha and the herbs, the tools you have in the world around you to make your life easier. This is what I'm talking about. Using what is available to you to experience. It doesn't mean you're running away from your life. It also doesn't mean you're trying to manifest everything and avoid what God has given you. It's simply flowing in the easiest way possible. Manikji, you have a question?
Yes, so I actually just live tried doing this exercise which you just mentioned, and for my chart, it kind of changes the ascendant Rashi completely, right? And in your experience, how much have you experienced this tantric technique influence? I know you mentioned about 40-50% time, but if
Yeah.
you try doing it for yourself or for your clients, how much impact have you
Oh,
seen?
I have sent people halfway around the world because in my experience, it works. And again, so my partner Nadia did a full class on this. So I would strongly recommend that you look at that. Her website is humannarratives.com. In fact, let me take you there. I'm just going to give this plug because she did it the full justice.
And she's also living in some other part of the world, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. Now, so let me answer your question. Her website, by the way, is humannarratives.com. I will put that in the chat. Just give me 1 second. I'll put it in the chat,
Mhm.
and then you guys can have it. I don't know where the chat is. Chat, there it is. Okay, humannarratives.com. So here's my experience. You can use this to adjust your chart. You can also use this to adjust your Varshafal. The talk I'm giving at the Parashara conference later in November, one of the points I will cover is this. So we all have solar returns, our birthdays. The part of Vedic astrology and traditional Western astrology is taking the chart of the year, which is the exact moment the sun reaches its natal position to degree, minute, and second.
Right.
And now that's usually taken from your birthplace. And the diehards of astrology will say that's all there is. I disagree. My belief and my practical experience is that your natal birth chart will always have an effect wherever you live. But if you spend your birthday at a different location from your birthplace, you also have to look at the chart for that location, and it can change your life experience up to 50%. So your natal solar return chart will still be in effect. But if it's a negative one, let's say it doesn't look good, you can mitigate it 50, maybe even 60%. Who knows? These percentages are made up. but I think up to 50% you can mitigate it by being in a different location. And I have sent people there multiple times. I have done it myself, and I do find that it works. It has
Yeah,
merit.
because as soon as I do that in my own natal chart, it moves my moon, which was in second house, to the first house, and within the Amsha degrees that you mentioned. So pretty fascinating. Makes me from Cancer to Leo ascendant. Totally changes the sign. But very interesting technique. I have experienced both Cancer and Leo traits myself.
Yeah. And it would make you more public oriented, more sensitive to, more apparently sensitive than normal to people and so forth. And yeah, and in Vivi, you're right. This one reason I travel, because I test everything on myself first. I rarely like to tell people stuff that I haven't tried.
Yeah, I
And
recall your story from other class about the move to Puerto Rico and how they offered you a job immediately.
yeah, exactly. That was my first real taste of it. And it was mind blowing. Um, okay, so that's an aside, but it's one thing we can look at, because there are yogas for poverty also. There are yogas for ill health. And the question then always becomes, well, what do we do? What can we do? But we'll get to that. All right. Yogas are also formed by planets in specific signs. What does this mean? There is one yoga. So now we've just been looking at the houses that the planets are in. Now we're going to move into the signs, and I'm going to move a little faster now. Raju Yoga is formed when many planets are placed in movable signs. What are the movable signs? Chara Rashis: Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. This stamps the person with qualities in their life that they will have major life changes. They will be restless. They will always want to move and change from place to place. Speaking of travel, lots of travel. By the way, I don't have this yoga, but and one notable quality, and it doesn't always have to be there, but is that they will move away from their birthplace, culture, or country. Okay, so here's an example of a chart with that yoga. Is actually Nadia's chart. You see Jupiter, Venus, Sun, and Mercury are in movable signs, so 4 planets. Rahu also. But, and here's the key. Okay, so when you read this yoga in the text, it won't give you this key. The key is, especially if the ascendant is also. Okay, this is the trick. If the ascendant is movable and there are other planets movable, that means everything will be in the kendras, the angles. This person's life will be marked by massive life changes and probably moving away from their home culture and country. She moved away from Russia and has made her life in the US. Back to Mr. Jim Carrey's chart, whose chart we looked at earlier. I told you we're going to go back to these charts over and over to see how yogas stack and layer upon each other. Look at this. His ascendant is movable, Libra, right? And all of his planets, except for 2, are in movable signs. And he, by the way, he was born in Canada, but he made his career in the United States. So the definition to a T, lots of major life changes, restlessness. I think somewhere in the Shastra it even says that the person may experience jealousy. I don't know how much that. I think the term jealousy could mean they look at the lives of other people and they want that life. Like they want change, right? So to make changes, you have to be motivated for change. Make sense? Are you able to identify this? That's my question here. Can you identify that this is a yoga where all the planets are now not just in the invisible part of the zodiac, but also in movable signs? So this is 2 yogas that we're stacking. Okay, I hope so. I hope you're able to see that.
Yeah.
All right. So the next one is most planets in fixed signs. Do you need to know the names? No. I put them here. Raju means a cord, a rope. Musala means a pestle, the thing that you grind herbs and spices with, or yeah. This is where most planets are in fixed signs. Then the success, this is the opposite, right? Likely is close to your place of birth. You find success in your own country, your own family. You like, you're stable, determined, stubborn, clear, fixed, clear in the sense of I have goals. I need to do this to achieve it, and then the next thing, and then the next thing, right? There's a methodical, thought out kind of energy. Let's take a look at an example of that. Here again is a chart of Howard Hughes. What is notable again here is that the ascendant is also a fixed sign. And you have Saturn, Ketu, Mercury, Venus, and Rahu, and Mars, and Jupiter, all in these fixed signs. So you could not out stubborn this person. Whatever this person decided, they would put their mind to and accomplish. Now, notice that what we mentioned earlier about him being highly eccentric, you have to work that into the definition. Because we have this idea that highly eccentric people are very flighty and they change their minds. No, not this one. He's both highly eccentric, innovative, but also highly practical because of Saturn. And he was born in the US, lived in the US. He never didn't need to leave his country. His success was here. Musala Yoga. Very, very hard person probably to reason with, I would say, because they dig in, they get entrenched. All right, let's see. The final example is when all the planets are in mixed signs. That is Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, or Pisces. Now, this one has a very interesting interpretation, which is that, and it's based on the rulers of these signs, which are Mercury and Jupiter. So if you have all of your planets or many of your planets, including your ascendant, that's the key, in these mixed signs means most of your planets will be ruled by Mercury and Jupiter, and therefore Mercury and Jupiter are considered the human planets, or if you're Bernie Sanders, the human planets. So your career, your life, your orientation will be around human things. Well, what do you mean, Simon? What does that mean? It means not machines, not plants, not constructing houses, but education, counseling, knowledge, wisdom, information systems, working with people. Okay? Because this is what Mercury and Jupiter do. So this is good for analysts, educators, consultants, media people, whatever it is. Okay. The downside is they're dual signs. So there's duality entrenched in your personality. You can see 2 points of view. So it's harder to make decisions. Sometimes you will have changes of career, changes of relationships because of that duality. Let's take a look at an example. Here is the chart of Anthony Robbins, Tony Robbins, whose ascendant is in a dual sign, and he has Jupiter, Saturn, Ketu, Mercury, Moon, or the nodes Mercury and Moon. So not all of his planets, okay, but a good portion of the planets in these signs. And what does he do? Well, he empowers people. He helps people find their, their personal power, their passion. And you could say, if you were to divide this chart, that based on the degree of the ascendant, Ketu, Mercury, and Moon are all on the bottom side here. Okay. So really, he has that yoga called, I will tell you the name, it's called Nauka, which means boat, because this looks like a boat. But it doesn't really tell you anything about it. Except that sometimes people with this combo will love to sail. They'll be sailors. That's a little anomaly. Whether Tony Robbins loves to sail or not, or Jim Carrey, I don't know, and I wouldn't lead with that. But if you don't know who Anthony Robbins is, well, you should. And if you do, you know that what is his trait? The power to access the invisible part of you for manifesting visible effects in life. Again, harnessing the power of the subconscious mind. Even though there are only 2 planets here, very strong planets, still he has that yoga. Most of the stuff is in the invisible portion of the zodiac. And most of the planets are in human signs. Therefore, instead of being an engineer or a microbiologist who works on the invisible things, right? Could be. He works on human engineering. So he's a guru, basically. Okay, makes sense? Here again is the chart of Joseph Campbell, whom we just looked at. Note that, again, most of his planets, okay, not Moon, Saturn, or Venus, but Mars, Jupiter, Mercury, Sun, and the nodes, and his ascendant. This is the key, guys. Also the ascendant. When the ascendant is there, even if it's 2 or 3 planets, it will key the life around this theme. Joseph Campbell was a writer, an educator, a teacher, as we've discussed. Right? Very human pursuits. All right, any questions? So about these 3 yogas, all the planets in movable signs, all the planets in fixed signs, all the planets in mutable or common signs or dual signs. Notice that even the nature of the signs has different names. Cardinal or movable, fixed, and then the mutable, common, dual, they have more names. And one of the things that it says in the Shastra is that the person may have an additional limb or something extra in their body. Now, I also would not lead with that. Right? Like, do you have an extra appendage or something? But I don't know how true that is, to be honest. I mean, Tony Robbins has extra growth. He's giant man, right? He's a very big guy. So there's that. But I don't know about the rest of it, which is why I didn't actually put it in the definition for Nala.
It's also used for children, twins or more children, etc.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so these are all yogas, guys, and these have names in the Sanskrit tradition. There are many others, so let's go to this document here. I just want to show you what we've just looked at are the following. Let me get my note. So we just looked at these yogas here in the beginning. Nauka, which is the boat, which is all the planets occupying houses 1 through 7. Kuta, planets occupying 4 through 10. Chatra, which is umbrella, and Dhanush. Again, I don't care about the names. And by the way, the definitions, not so. The person will be famous and miserly, greedy, ambitious, fickle, earning through water related. I don't know. Maybe. But in modern times, what you want to look at is the symbolism is the most telling. Everything is invisible. So everything is on the inside. What is on the inside? The person's own thoughts, their own subconscious mind, their self-dialogue. That is what's going to be most important to them. Now, yes, when you're on a ship for a very long time and you're sailing across the ocean, that's what happens. You're alone with your thoughts. And maybe that's why sailors or people with this yoga will like sailing, because they get to be alone. But in the modern context, maybe they just like to take long drives. So you could lead with that. You could ask Tony Robbins or Jim Carrey, hey, do you like taking long drives by yourself just to think? I bet you they would say yes. Or, I mean, if it's Tony Robbins, he'd probably say, oh man, I would love to, but I just don't have the time. Because he's always busy. Okay, so in a modern context, it doesn't have to be a sailor. It can be someone who spends extended periods alone contemplating life. And because the fourth house is vehicles, it could be on a vehicle, maybe on a horse, horseback riding, or something like that, or a train, taking a long train ride in the country. All right. So, okay. Let's see. Let me check the chat really quick. iPhone says this happened to me. Does that mean that you have the movable, all the planets in movable signs? Elizabeth, let's see. Ascended and 3 planets immovable, and I've been moving and traveling all my life. Thank you. Spend most of my life outside of my home country. I have 5 planets in duals. Okay, so 3 planets in movable signs and the ascendant. That's the key. If the ascendant is movable and you have other multiple planets, that will give its effect for sure. But you also, the other 5 are in dual signs and a leadership and life coach consultant. Beautiful. That's perfect. That's so, well expressed. And we haven't gone into looking at any specific aspects or anything like that, right? We've got some life themes. All right. Beatriz, no, we're not considering the outer planets here. Not at all. This is just for the visible planets. Rahulji, the meaning of MC. MC is medium coeli, which is a Latin term which means the highest point of the zodiac in the sky. That is the highest point a planet can reach before it begins. So if you're looking at during the day, let's say you're looking at the sun, it's really for the sun. The highest point the sun will reach in the sky is the MC before it begins to come down. Okay, that's the MC. So it's the highest point of the zodiac, which metaphorically represents your career because it's the 10th house cusp, technically. Although in a sign-based system like Jyotisha, it might actually fall in the 9th or the 11th sign sometimes. But that's based on the latitude you were born in. So sometimes the MC, logically you would think, well, it has to be in the 10th house, right? Well, no, sometimes it can be here, sometimes it can be here, and sometimes if you're born very high or low latitudes or very close to the solstices, it can even be here or here. Now, don't ask me to get into that, but for these yogas, except for the one where we're talking about, well, look at that, MCs with K2 right now for the beginning of this class, MCs conjunct K2. Anyway, that's the definition of the MC. I hope that helped. The highest point in the sky that the sun will reach, or any planet in the zodiac will reach before it begins to come down. Okay, let's see, other questions. It's the intersection of the ecliptic with the meridian, right? So the meridian is right. So the ecliptic is the path of the zodiac, or the apparent path of the sun and the planets. Yeah, okay, I'll hold you, yes, thank you. One question, gurus change their name because the same reason with changing location, aha. So name, first of all, I'll say that numerology, if you're going to change your name, you have to consider numerology as well as astrology. You can't just go based on astrology. But gurus get their name changes often because the name just comes. One of my teachers was really good with giving people names. It just came. And if you notice, my email, siddhadeva@yahoo.com, is my spiritual name. Now, I don't go around calling myself that. I don't use it. really, but your spiritual name gives you something to aspire to. If you're named after Krishna, then you aspire to have some Krishna, like Kishore Das or something, whatever it is, or Krishna Das, right? It's very simple. You aspire to those qualities. That's the deva level, the high level. On the lower earthly level, you would want to also do the numerology of your name to see what kind of energy it is invoking. Whether gurus do that, I don't think so, because they get their inspiration from above. I mean, Vivekananda wasn't always Vivekananda, the great, yogi saint, disciple of Ramakrishna. His name was Narendra when he first met Ramakrishna, and then he had several name changes before he finally settled it. He got the name Vivekananda. So names represent levels of your evolution, and they are a mysterious thing. But yes, changing your name is definitely an upaya. It is a way to answer your question, Vivi. Yes, it is like changing your location. So you're going to live from Washington, D.C. to Los Angeles. You're changing the name of your city. Yes, changing your name is similar. It invokes a different energy in your chart. In fact, there is a service, again, on Nadia's site, which is called Lucky Sounds, and you can find your lucky sounds. There's also, I mean, the Vedic tradition is amazing. There's a system called Kakini, K-A-K-I, Kakini, that determines the name of the city and your birth name. And based on the first sound, will the city eat you up or will you eat up the city? And it basically counts who gets more points. And if you get more points in the city, then that's perfect. That's what you want. You want to move to a place to a city name where you're going to be dominant versus where the city is going to overwhelm you. So for some people, New York, the sound nu is great because that n sound, helps them overwhelm. But for some people, the n sound overwhelms them. And they don't know why. Oh, it's a beautiful place, but I can't make it here. Well, contrary to what Sinatra said, not everyone, if you can make it here, you'll make it anywhere. But all right, we're getting off topic. Yes.
Can I ask you a quick question? My daughter just moved from Vancouver, BC to LA. Is that significant enough of a move to make much of a
Yes.
difference?
Oh, yes, it can make a huge difference. Sorry, a huge difference. Both in terms of the name, Vancouver, and Los Angeles will have a different vibrational energy in the Kakini as well as, so the Kakini system, I suppose I could teach that. It will take 30 minutes. If you guys really want it, I can do it. It has nothing to do with yoga, by the way, but also because the latitude change is dramatic, it could certainly change the chart. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Other final questions here. Okay. Is there another way to bring those changes to the chart when traveling is not possible? Yeah, there are always, yes. Vedic tradition is full of upayas. I mean, rings and mantras and stuff. We have to be careful not to get lost in this idea of I need to change my chart. You have your chart for a reason. Remember, when you go to a doctor or an Ayurvedic doctor, they give you the herbs that you need, not all the possible herbs you can take. So sometimes we get greedy. I speak for myself. If you saw my cabinet, you'll see so many herbs and things. And sometimes friends come over like, oh my God, you take all this stuff. I'm like, well, no, it's, a hem and haw. So I fall into this category, but be careful of trying to fix too many things in your chart because some things you just have to go, okay, God gave me this for a reason and I'm going to learn to live with it. And that is my path and I'm going to grow because of it. But some things, yes. So you have to be judicious. Some things, if you have a headache, you don't need Advil. But sometimes you do because, okay, I'm going out and I don't want to be grumpy. So let me just take the Advil. Okay. You have to decide which things you want to change and not. All right. All right. So moving on. Planets. Okay. Actually, right now, I want to switch gears a little bit because I know this will be the only class some people take because this was a free class. So what I want to do is introduce you to some yogas for wealth. And these come straight from the Vedic tradition. And before I go into, I'll start with Chandramangala. What we're going to do in this class is we're going to go by theme. Instead of just listing yogas and saying, okay, you got to memorize all this. We're going to start with yogas for wealth. Okay. Then we'll go to yogas that detract, that block your wealth. Then we'll go to yogas for success, yogas for spiritual attainment, and so forth. We'll go by theme rather than just listing a bunch of yogas and forcing you to memorize them. I'm going to cover two today. The first is called Chandramangala. This is one that is a personal favorite of mine because I happen to have it, but also because in having it, I've come up with a way of interpreting it that I think you won't find in other places. Namely, it's this, that when you have Chandramangala yoga, what you love to do, your hobby, your passion becomes your work. This is the tendency. I'm not saying it always happens because people are forced into jobs, because of life circumstances, but all other factors being equal, the person will lean into doing what their passion is. And the quality of it is ironic because it is a money creating yoga, but the way it creates the money is because you don't care about the money. It's about the work you do, not about the effect. So Bill Gates has this yoga. He loves computers. And he got into that. I mean, obviously he is very much about the money because he's got a ton of money combinations, but that particular yoga, it wasn't about the money. It was about actually doing this thing. This is the chart of Joe Rogan. If now it is rectified to put this in his ascendant, but whatever his ascendant is, even if this is not his correct ascendant, which this is my sort of back of the napkin rectification, but he still has Chandramangala yoga, which simply means Moon and Mars together in the same Rashi. And if you know anything about Joe Rogan, I was just talking about someone yesterday that he has helped the careers of so many people become podcasters. And then the person asked, who was the original podcaster? I'm like, Joe Rogan. Like he basically started that. Now, maybe there were people before him, but and it started as a passion project. It started as whatever you feel about him, by the way, it doesn't matter. The quality of the career is there. He started because he loved to do that. It was not about money. He started his MMA commenting career working for free just because he loved being there and talking about MMA. Okay, Moon Mars, Chandramangala. What
Quick question,
happened? Uh-huh.
Simon, does it matter which house it is in and dignity of Moon and Mars, or it doesn't matter?
Absolutely. It will give you the amplitude of the effect. So if Mars and Moon are dignified, then it'll be even more powerful in terms of its effect on the world and its ability to bring you money. Because this falls under the category of wealth creating yogas, but it's one of the ironic wealth creating yogas because you actually are doing the thing because you don't care about the money. You just love doing the thing. But in doing that, eventually the money comes. It follows you. When you're not paying attention to Lakshmi or to, let's say, to the pretty girl, and everyone else is, and you're walking away, and she'll turn and she's like, hey, why is he not paying attention to me? And she'll follow you. You get it? So Lakshmi follows you with this yoga rather than you moving towards her.
Got it. So if it's in 10th house, but say Virgo sign, does it matter? Because in this case, it is in the Libra sign and ascendant, right? Pretty powerful. If it's in 10th sign and Virgo, does it matter in general, just as a hypothetical?
It doesn't matter. So for Bill Gates, I think he has Mars here and Moon here. I think that's, or it could be
Right.
reversed, but I think it's like this, opposite. So in this case, for him, it will play out very much in his career. He will make money through his job, through his work. Whereas for Rogan, he makes money through his personality, through his
Got it.
own
Okay.
physicality. Yeah, so if it's in your third house, you have Moon, Mars here, it'll be through your ability to express yourself, through dance, through writing, through whatever. If it's in the 11th house, it'll be through industry or business or social concerns. If it's in the 7th house, it'll be through partnership, right? So yes, the houses do matter, but the core definition remains the same wherever it's located, is that you follow your passion and the money, Lakshmi, follows you.
Got it.
All right. Let's see. So yeah, Bill Gates. Okay, I don't have other examples, but just for the sake of time, I'm going to move on to the next yoga. Does everyone get? Oh, by the way, and the yoga is formed in two ways. The Moon and Mars can be opposite, or they can be conjoined. When I say conjoined, I simply mean in the same sign. Doesn't have to be the same degree, or just in Vedic astrology, in the same Rashi. By the way, if you change to the tropical zodiac, sometimes it will be it will change. So we're
Sorry.
going by the sidereal zodiac here.
Did you mention what made your interpretation different?
Well, my interpretation is that nowhere have I read that your passion becomes your work.
Oh, I see. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And that the person isn't overtly interested in the money. They're overtly, like, I never thought I'd do astrology for a living, ever. Was not in my radar, but I loved it. I've loved it since I was 9, 10 years old, and reading books. I have wanted to know about myself, my chart. And I never, when I got older, people would look that I was carrying an astrology book and they'd say, "Oh, you do astrology? Can you do my chart?" I'm like, "No, I don't know. No, I can't. Sorry." Because I didn't know enough. I only read the combinations that applied to me, right? They
That's
said,
so
no,
funny.
come
That
on,
was very
please.
similar. It's interesting that you never brought up the real estate connection.
Real estate is possible, yes. But I would want the involvement of the fourth house as well there, because yes, Mars is the natural significator of real estate. Moon is of land, rather. Moon is the natural significator of public and exchange of goods and services. So by one way or another, Chandramangala people do benefit from real estate, but it doesn't mean it's what they do. It's just that over the course of their lives, they will be. I've benefited from real estate. I have Chandramangala yoga, but it's not configured with my fourth house. And Rogan owns, $1 million mansions, I'm sure. It's now Bill Gates, on the other hand, has his Chandramangala on the 410 axis. So he will actively, he's actively buying land and real estate. Like that is something he does.
Mm-hmm.
So I would want the fourth house activated somehow, either that Moon or Mars own the fourth house or they're in the fourth house for this
I
combo.
just thought it was because Moon rules the fourth house.
Well, Moon is a significator for the fourth house
It's
in the
significant.
natural zodiac. It doesn't rule the fourth house
I'm
necessarily.
sorry, that's how I meant to put it.
Yeah. Yes, Moon is a natural significator. Mars is a natural significator of land. So yes, real estate can be a part of Chandramangala, and it often is as a side effect, but it's not the direct thing, in my opinion. Now, one thing about the opposition and the conjunction that I found is that the opposition means that the person over the course of their career, their life, will switch to another passion project, to something else. So maybe they started by being a Harley Davidson enthusiast and they make, you know, I don't know, custom Harley bikes. And they do that for 10, 15 years. But then they get into raising ferrets. So their passion becomes raising ferrets. A ferret is a little animal. And then that becomes their passion. It doesn't mean they lost their passion for Harleys. They still have it, but they've moved on to another aspect. Okay?
Thank you.
In the case of Bill Gates and other people who have the opposition, it started with computers for him, and now it's something else, his Gates Foundation, whatever. Whereas the conjunction tends to be that passion tends to remain for life. Now, it doesn't mean they only do one thing for life. It just means that will stick with them. I'm thinking about Joe Rogan, MMA, fighting, that's his thing. And it'll always be there. Like that.
Simon G, would you have a Chandra Mangala also if Moon and Mars are in Kendra?
To each other? No,
Yes.
technically I would not consider that.
Okay.
I would say conjunct or opposite.
Okay.
Just to be clear, so we don't go, well, it's Chandra Mangala like, and there are plenty of yogas we can have. So when we identify yogas, let's make sure that they're actually happening. Because when we
One
talk to
quick
our
question.
clients, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Simon, one quick question. Can Chandramangala Yoga be equally applicable if it's on the D9 chart,
Yes.
Navamsha chart, Vedic? Yeah, okay.
Yes, so with the qualitative difference that it would be, it may apply to your partner, that your partner will have this, that they will be
Right.
passionate about a thing that becomes their career, okay? Because the D9 is the chart, in one sense, of the person you're going to attract, your life partner. But the D9 is also a harmonic of your natal chart. So we could think of it this way. You want to have this combination. Let's say you don't have it in your D1, but it's in your D9. Your soul admires people who have this combo or would like to have this combo. And so you attract someone in your life who has it or has that quality. So it's, can you say that you have Chandramangala if it's only in your D9? Yes, of course you can. But it won't play out in the same obvious, overt ways that it would if it's in your natal chart. You may have
Understood. Thank you.
partnerships, yeah. All
Sorry,
right, go ahead.
yeah, what about in D10?
Same in D10. So if you have this in D10, it means that your career, I mean, we have to, the D9 is a direct harmonic of the natal chart. The D10 now is an extrapolation of just the 10th house, really, functionally, even though it's extrapolated from the whole chart. It's really talking just about your career. So it could say that your career is has the quality of Moon Mars, so there's passion, but it could be that your career is maybe you're a firefighter or a police, or army or engineering or something like that. So it doesn't necessarily have to be that it's still a Chandramangala yoga, yes. Okay, let me clarify. If you have this yoga anywhere in the D charts, it can create wealth from whatever that thing is. So if it's in your D7 of children, your children may be wealthy. They'll produce wealth. If it's in your 10th house, your career will produce wealth, or you may work in finance or in whatever, but there will be wealth. It's a wealth producing combination.
Simonji, what if it's in the 12th house, which is typically the house of loss, right?
Wealth through investment or wealth through foreign sources, wealth through passion projects that have to do with charity, that have to do with giving, that have to do with ashram. So maybe you set up a 501(c), a nonprofit, or you start your own religion, or your own prison, or in America, you can have your own prison. Hey, what do you do? I'm a businessman. Oh, what's your business? I own
They do
prison.
that in the States, it's a private enterprise.
Yes, that's what I mean. So there are ways to make the 12th house profitable, even though classically Vyaya is the house of expenditure, but expenditure could be your gain in the sense that maybe you make a percentage of what people spend on things. I don't know. You can make the, or you can own a hospital or a prison or an ashram. So if you have wherever Chandramangala goes, it will tend to produce profit. But again, it has to be dignified. There has to be some strength to it. And the better if it owns positive houses, which we'll get into in the course. If Moon and Mars, say, own the second and the 11th house and they're together in your 12th, they'll still make you money just through 12th house things, because that additionally becomes a dhana, a wealth producing yoga. So we have to look at all of that. Okay. So yes, Mukherjee, we have answered the question of the D9, that yes, this will basically, you will attract a partner that has money. Okay. Or if you want to go further into my extrapolation, that they're passionate about what they do, and because of that passion, money follows them, etc., etc.
Thank you.
Mrinalini, my dad has this. He was in sales and marketing first half and moved to academia later. Yeah, beautiful. And I'm assuming you're saying he has the opposition, right? Which, again, this is the thing you're not going to get in the text. This is my observation between the opposition and the conjunctions. And my dharma is to share with you what I've learned, right? So by definition, I'm going to recommend some really good books. Mark Boney has written a great book called the Yoga Graha Deepika. You have to get that. It's wonderful. There are other great books on yogas but it's not possible to cover everything in one class. But I will share with you, from my point of view, what I feel the yogas offer. Yuri, I know. Yes, I'm in Little Elm right now. That's where I am.
Oh,
Well,
it will be
we should-
wonderful to meet you, man.
Yes, we should definitely say hi. Do you know my email? Shoot me an email
Okay, okay.
with your
Yes.
number, and we can get together. Absolutely. What if Mars is retrograde? Okay. Well, retrogression means that the planet is brighter in the sky, so that passion will be even brighter, but it will be marked by fits and starts, by a sense of compulsion, a sense of repetition, a sense of, I really want to start my business. And you get to a point, but then you get, the other things happen in life. And then you start it again and even more strongly. There's a sense of obsession and passion and compulsion with a retro planet. And so Mars is no exception. It would make that passion quality even stronger. But with the possibility that sometimes you go down dead end streets, like you try things and it doesn't work, and then you have to come back and try it again. That kind of. All right. Yeah, Yuri, let's definitely get together if we're here in the same town. This is great.
Yeah, I left the phone number for you, man, in the chat.
Awesome. Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay. All right, let's do the final one. And this is very, very interesting. I mentioned that there are yogas that are more powerful than Lakshmi yoga. And some of you might have gone, oh, has he lost his mind? How can there be a yoga for wealth that's more powerful than Lakshmi? Okay. Well, let's forget the more powerful, less powerful. Let's say as powerful. And these are what Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra calls the yogas for great wealth. And they're not what you think. They are, oops. Oh, I didn't write them down. Okay. They are the 5-11 yogas. So I'm going to, in fact, let me write them on the slide here right now as we do this live. They occur when a planet in own or exaltation sign is in the 5th house and a planet in own or exaltation sign in 11th house. Okay, that's the first definition of the 5-11 yoga.
Does this include Rahu and Ketu?
No, no Rahu Ketu, only the actual visible planets. Now, we can extend this through cleverness if two planets are in parivartana. That is planetary exchange between 5 and 11, oops, 5th and the 11th house. Mark Boney, whom I just mentioned in his book, Yoga Grahadipa, in fact, let's see, no, that's not it. Let's go to Amazon. Okay, I'll show it to you later. Let me, let's see, here. In his book, he shows the rectified chart of Mark Zuckerberg, which I'm going with his rectification. This is a chart of Mark Zuckerberg, according to Mark Boney, who has done months of research into his life and his events, and he says this chart makes sense. Okay, and I agree with him. This is what he shows. What do we notice across the 5-11 axis? Well, you will
So
notice.
first is Mars and Saturn together is a bit of an engineering sort of focus, and then also you have an exchange between your Venus, which is Lord of Libra, in the 5th house, and then your Mars, which is Lord of 5th house in the 11th house.
Absolutely. We have the exchange happening here. So Venus in Aries, Mars in Libra across the 5-11. This qualifies, even though Parashara does not talk about this. He doesn't say planets are in exchange. But what does an exchange do? It basically takes a planet and puts it back in its own sign. And it takes this planet metaphorically and puts it back in its own sign. So you can consider this as qualifying, and Mark Boney does. And so this is one yoga for great wealth. Now, from his book on the yogas, he gives this chart, and I unabashedly copied, but I'm giving him credit for this because he saw this is the chart of a lottery winner who won $20 million. Again, we're talking about big money here, guys, big money. What do we note? We see Jupiter in its own sign in the 5th, and Mercury in its own sign in the 11th. In fact, Parashara talks about own sign primarily. A planet in its own in the 5th and a planet in its own in the 11th. If they are backed up by other planets, so in the case of Zuckerberg, he also has Saturn there. Saturn happens to be the ruler of the 2nd house, so now it becomes even more powerful because it's a money house. And Mars is ruler of the 5th, and it becomes something called the Dana Yoga. And Venus is ruler of the 11th. So this is like 4 yogas on top of each other. We will discuss this when we get stacking, stack. Just one yoga is nice, but if you have 3 or 4 or 5, Bill Gates' charts is the same thing. He has like 10 massive wealth yogas. So it's not just one thing that he's relying on. That's when you can predict multimillionaire, even multi-billionaire, when the yogas are stacked. In this case, billionaire. So here's the chart of the lottery winner who has the Jupiter and Mercury in their own sign opposite. Okay, does this make sense?
Yes, and also would you see that the Yoga Karaka for the Leo is the Mars, and it's sitting in the 9th in the Bhagya house. Also, that could have influenced the lottery winning.
Well,
And the
people
moon is
have
also
Mars in Aries with a Leo ascendant, and there are not a lot of, I mean, hundreds of thousands of people have this.
okay.
That by itself is nice. It means you're a lucky person. It means you're blessed with some good fortune and luck. But this specific yoga, this is why I want you guys to think of this. It is many, many tiers above. So it's like you've gone to the basketball game. Mars is in the basketball game, but it's sitting way up high in the seats. It still gets to see the game, but this is like front row. Okay. There's a qualitative difference between a nice influence. The Rajyo Karaka Mars is in the ninth house. Oh, in the ninth house, creating a Ruchika yoga. Yes, absolutely. The person is lucky. The person has got um, favored by fortune. So yes, absolutely, this helps. But if it were just that, I wouldn't necessarily predict massive wealth for them, because Mars isn't, well, it's aspected by Jupiter, so there's some bandha there.
There's also an exchange between the moon and Venus.
And it's a 10-12 exchange, which makes the moon even stronger if it needed it. It's already fully exalted. Yeah, so it strengthens those planets, but that is not a yoga for wealth. So this is why we have to be very, very binary in the way we look at this. First of all, does what I'm looking at qualify as the yoga? Earlier, there was a question, what about Mars in the sixth? It aspects the Lagna. Does that make me Martian? Well, technically, no. It's not the same as having Mars in the ascendant. So the first step of analyzing yogas is the binary method of saying, is there a yoga to analyze?
Well,
And if there
Mercury is
is,
the 11th and the 2nd
Hmm?
and connects to Jupiter.
Yeah, so now becomes a Dana yoga, especially because it's the 11th Lord with the 5th Lord, the 2nd Lord with the 5th Lord. That's two yogas right there.
Mhm.
And Jupiter's the 8th Lord of sudden gain. So this is, very good for exactly that. Either she's going to get a huge inheritance or win the lottery or something like that. But again, let me reiterate this point. First, you must determine, is the yoga present? And what is the nature of the yoga? So you're very correct. Moon and Venus exchange houses. That is a Parivartana yoga.
But
But is this a wealth yoga? No, has
No.
nothing to do with wealth. It strengthens both planets. It will create a combination of her career with the 12th house. Maybe she will retire early. Maybe her career will be around 12th house themes. Who knows? Right? So when we start in the next class, we're going to go deeper into wealth, just wealth yogas, things that create wealth. And yeah, so, and Chandramangala falls in that category too, even though it's kind of the ugly duckling of the crowd because it doesn't care about wealth so much. Yes, go ahead.
I was
So
going to
quick,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go
So
ahead,
quick
and then
question.
Mani.
In this case, Simonji, if somebody had this configuration and say 410 or say 39, and if they moved somewhere else, would that help them get it or it won't have the potential?
Okay, this very hypothetical question. This is just between us chickens here. No one else is listening. My opinion is it would push you towards that. It would become a more fortunate wealth producing combo, because if it's on 410, it's not a wealth combo. It could be a Raja yoga, it could be for success and career and so forth. But this specific yoga in the classic text, Brihad Parashara Shastra, says the planet has to be in the 5th and the other has to be in the 11th. That's it. Doesn't say. There are other chapters that talk about, the Lord of the 4th and the Lord of the 9th, the Lord of the 5th and the 9th. They're Raja yogas. Great. This is yogas for great wealth, period. Not
And
Raja
I'm
yogas.
asking this because Mark Zuckerberg specifically moved from Boston to Bay Area. I mean, he moved for other commercial reasons, that his startup was not being valued the right way in Boston area. Because I've spoken with folks who have rejected him money when he was kind of trying to raise funds. And then he moved to Bay Area, knowing that Bay Area will recognize him, and he ran into people over there, which were amazing. So I actually wanted to shift this from White Plains to say Bay Area and see, just like how we discussed earlier, right, that if we change the axis, would it make any difference or even see if in the astrocartography that line, from astro.com, if it made any change for him in the Bay Area. And Bay Area has like such massive outlandish sort of outcomes for some of the people who have moved from
Yeah.
rest of the part of the world to there. Just wanted to see that line as well. And if that is a topic we could discuss in some future class, that'd be awesome.
Here's the thing, when it doesn't matter where he moves, if he runs the period of any of these planets, the wealth will come because it's already promised in his natal chart.
Got it.
Okay, so the chart shows the static potential. The Dasha Bhukti, the period, shows when that will fructify. So if he runs Venus, Mercury, Saturn, the wealth will come 100%. Wherever he's living, he could be in the middle of a deserted island, doesn't matter, because it's just there, it's fixed on him. Now, if you don't have the 5-11 combo, let's say, like you said, it's on your 410, but you want to move somewhere and now it's in your 5-11, could this push it a little bit? I would say yes, but again, I haven't played around with this that much to see if certain yogas become activated because you've switched. My sense is yes, but it certainly wouldn't negate the birth chart, but it could add yes, it could add a flavor. Listen, no technique in Vedic astrology, whether it's wearing a diamond ring or moving somewhere, is going to take care of everything for you. We have to treat them as tools. A screwdriver is good for screws. A hammer is good for nails. You can't rely on the hammer to solve everything for you, right?
Speaking of rings, Simonji, I've noticed you don't have any gems in your hand, whereas many other astrologers I see, they have lots of gems.
That's
So
right.
what is your belief that gems don't matter, or what's your belief system? I don't have any, so
Yeah.
I'm just checking with you.
I've always been poor, so I've never had money for gemstones, but that's okay. That's one thing. I have worn gemstones, and I do find that they work. They work for some people more than others. I'm really not one of those. Look, if you're going to get a gemstone for your lagna, the ruler of your ascendant, because as we'll see, the yogas, your ability to manifest the potential in your life is really based on the power of your ascendant. If your ascendant is weak, no matter how many yogas you have, they won't fructify. You'll have great dreams, you have big dreams, but they may never fully realize if you're not able to, step out of the house. Maybe you have environmental allergies or you have chronic fatigue, right? You have a weak ascendant. And so it's very hard for you to get yourself out there to manifest the potential in your chart. So I do believe in gemstones to help you strengthen your lagna, if that's the case. As far as, having one for each planet or whatever, that's not me. But, my teacher, Dr. Vasant Lad, was very fond of stones. He had all kinds of stones in his fingers, but he worked with clients every day. He would see sick people every day. So he was around that energy. And in a way, the gemstones can create a certain field and aura that protects you. I'm not around people. I teach on Zoom, so I don't need it necessarily.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Good questions. Great questions. And yes, gemstones are another way of working with a particular karma. Let's say you have Chandramangala yoga, but your moon is weak. Let's say it's debilitated or something. And you want to get the most benefit from that yoga. Well, you can strengthen your moon somehow. Maybe, and maybe gemstone is a way to do it. I am not the, authority on gemstones, but, all right. So someone with fifth house Mars in Scorpio and moon in 11th in Taurus should make a lot of wealth following their passion. Yes, in theory, yes. Now, the more planets that are involved, the other part of what it says in Brihat Parashara Hora is that if other planets join, as here we see with Mark Zuckerberg, the Saturn, an exalted planet in the 11th, ruling the second, then it makes it even more powerful. Okay, so if it's just the two planets, it's fine. But if it's joined by other wealth ruling planets, then it's even more powerful. So yes, Christine, that's correct. Can we check if he moved? Okay, I'll have to, okay. Yes, well, in fact, this is the end of the class. We're already 2 hours in, more than that. So if you'd like to join the full program, the class times will be on Saturdays, okay? So today was the inauguration class. I hope you got something out of it. And it will be Saturdays from 1 p.m. Eastern to 3 p.m. Eastern, which should be good for the Europeans and the Americans, and I don't know about everybody else. Now, if you're not able to join live, the recording is yours for life, as always. And if you have questions, please email me. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank
What a
you.
great
And
class.
Simonji, is it from this Saturday or next Saturday?
I'm thinking of starting this Saturday,
Okay.
I'm thinking of keeping the momentum going.
Sounds good.
And it could be a small class this Saturday. We're just going to continue into yogas for wealth. That will be the emphasis.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, everyone. Hari Om. Thank you so much.
Thank
Let's do
you.
quick, quick closing prayer. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahe Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vindrishavahai. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha Hari Om. Hari Om Tat Sat. See you all on Saturday. I
Thank you,
appreciate
Simon.
everyone being here.
Have fun, enjoy life, and stay safe.
Likewise.
Texas.
Likewise. Texas.
Texas.
I'm right here. I'm right here, dude.
All right, guys. Take care.
All right.